and welcome to the House of Hammer. Oh look, it's you. Welcome back. Is that a new hat? Oh, beautiful. Oh, and your very good self. Are those new trousers, or are you just happy to see me? Seriously though, it is marvellous to welcome you all back through our doors. I will though just call this tour to a halt for just a brief moment, if you'll indulge me. As all of you now know, I'm sure, the halls around here are just a little more echoey than normal. Our dear friend, compatriot and fellow podcaster Adam has decided to hand in his keys here to the House of Hammer. Myself, Ben and Kev wish to allay any concerns that any of you may have. We haven't stopped being friends, and there's been no fallout. The House of Hammer was and is a massive undertaking, and sometimes there just isn't time in life to do all the things that you love. All three of us wish our mate all the best for all his future endeavours. I'm sure we will still be indulging in our usual boozy Zoom calls from time to time, but now the only difference will be we just won't be recording them for you lot to hear. But, you know, he was a good egg to the end. He said goodbye to Ingrid, he finally tidied his room, only took him a year, and he even turned in his limited edition House of Hammer underpants, freshly laundered too. So, we take this moment to bid our friend adieu, and we hope you will all join us in wishing him a fond farewell and all the luck we can muster.
He's a cat. Flush in the toilet, he's a cat. Flush in the toilet, he's a cat. Flush in the toilet, he's a cat. Flush in the toilet. He's a cat. Flush in the toilet, he's a cat. Flush in the toilet, he's a cat.
Okay then, how about we talk about a movie? Yeah, let's do that. We go from our friend spreading his wings to today's film in question, another Hammer effort from 1952, Wings of Danger. Following on from our previous episode of The Last Page, once again we have at the helm Terence Fisher, for his second stint in the director's chair for Hammer. Wings of Danger, based on the 1951 novel Dead on Course by Packham Webb and Elliston Trevor, follows pilot Richard Van Ness, played by Zachary Scott, a pilot by trade but who is somewhat treading on thin ice where his career is concerned, as his PTSD is causing him to have blackouts. Yes, this isn't your typical Denzel movie, where a ton of vodka is the cause of much mischief, sadly. Ness attempts to ground his friend Nick, played here by Robert Beatty, with one of the most confusing accents we have ever encountered so far, but more on that later, from flying during a particularly bad storm. However, Nick is the one who knows Richard's secret.
There's a load coming up from the southwest that's going to ground even the gulls, so be your age. I've already phoned Spencer.
We'll phone him again.
As far as I can see, this is just a routine flight. You're taking her plane back to the Guernsey sheds because that's where she belongs. Am I missing anything?
Not a thing.
Then you fly her tomorrow. She's not going to have pups during the night or anything.
Well, if she does, she'll have them on the Channel Islands. Any phone messages for Spencer?
Your plane has been grounded. Whose orders? Mine. So go jump in the Solent. Who are the wax daisies for? Anybody I know?
Alexia.
Oh, yeah?
From Spencer. He asked me to bring them across.
And do you think that's important? Well, there you are.
Well, if you want to stop me, go right ahead. You're duty boy, and that's it. But, I wouldn't.
That doesn't sound very friendly.
You can stop me flying tonight. I can stop you flying permanently. Right?
You're doing all the talking. Go right ahead.
Do I need to?
All right, so you're the one guy in the outfit that knows I black out every now and then. You're just the kind of heel that would use that.
Nick's plane never makes it to its intended destination, obvs, and you would think that that would be that, right? Shortest film ever. Collect the bits of Nick, put them in a bin liner, and have done with it. Of course not. How could you even think of such a thing? No, we've got far more intrigue to come. Ness gets drawn into a world of smuggling, more fake-your-own-deathness, and the practice of making gold look like a spanner just to get it across borders.
You know, Van, I didn't like you at first, but you grew on me.
Stop talking like a Siamese twin and say what's on your mind.
I will. Seen many of these? If you don't take your eyes off the road, it's a dollar bill. This is a very good dud, Vanessa. It's the sort of dud that's been costing Britain quite a lot of money. In the last 2 years, she's lost something like 10 million pounds. Most of it across the channel.
I know.
How do you know?
I'm an airline pilot, and a lot of money, both good and fake, goes by air. Also gold.
All right, Vanessa, I may as well tell you. You're suspect.
Is this interview official?
As good as. If you're in the racket, I'm out to bust you. If you're not, you can tell me about the air smuggling.
I said I was a pilot. If I didn't see what goes on, I'd have my eyes shut, wouldn't I? If you mean how much of the stuff I pass myself, the answer is none.
Now, my friends, that is just the very basics of the plot, quite frankly. There are many twists and turns that follow, and that is exactly why we've taken the executive decision to whisk you off straight away to the round table to give you a bit more of an idea. So, joining myself and my two delectably delicious co-hosts, Kev Moore and Ben Taylorson.
So here we are talking Wings of Danger. Smokey has been kind enough to already talk us through a plot summary. So I'm going to start with a question about our lead actor, Zachary Scott. So he was contracted to Warner Brothers for a number of years. Reasonably big star by this point, certainly someone that people will have heard of. And here he has a particularly pivotal role. But for me, he starts on the back foot. He starts as a kind of secondary character, almost sort of, I don't know, he's almost not the protagonist. We have this sort of interaction early on between him and another pilot that really puts him in the back foot. And I don't ever think he really recovers from that to give us that charismatic lead. I don't know what you guys thought. I'll go to you first, Kev. What did you think?
It was strange because when I was watching him, I didn't realise it was Zachary Scott. I didn't realise he was the star. I just got him down as being Richard Johnson's stunt double.
It's such a really odd dynamic, isn't it? I mean, the way that it plays out right from the beginning, as you say, Ben. In fact, yeah, I'm going to go with what you said. He starts out on the back foot. So he's got no control over the other pilot, Nick, we should mention, who is also the brother of his intended. So that throws that into the mix. He's got no control over him. He's very passive and a little bit submissive and a little bit downtrodden. He doesn't really seem to have any authority somewhat. And then when he gets sort of thrust into the action as the film goes on, he's still just, he's not, he's not Robert Preston in Cloudburst, he's not.
Absolutely not.
No.
Full on, this is the good guy. This is the guy we're rooting for through the film. Because honestly, he was so blasé about so much stuff that was going on. I don't think I cared very much about what he was doing.
He seems to spend the rest of the film making up for that opening 10 minutes. Because it's almost as if, and I'm not saying this is what actually happened, it's almost as if he read the script and said, fine, I'll do that opening 10 minutes. But after that, I've got to punch a guy out, I've got to shoot a guy, I've got to be seen to be alpha male, I've got to go here, go there, I've got to crack a forging ring, I've got to do everything, I've got to be a crack pilot. And it's like, but we've lost you, mate, by this, after that opening 10 minutes, I'm not interested. I was amazed, frankly, not really knowing Zachary Scott. I was amazed that character went on to be the protagonist of this film. I thought it was a kind of throwaway and we were waiting for our hero to come in. The fact that he was the man didn't sit comfortably with me at all.
An almost apt metaphor is that the first 10 minutes he's M, and then the rest of the film he wants to be James Bond. And he doesn't pull off either very well, really. I don't know, he's just, forgive me, but he's very skinny. And he's not exactly imposing looking. He doesn't really come across as forceful in any way. Do you not just think he was miscast?
He's shorter than his leading lady.
Well, this is true. But which one?
Both.
Well, yeah. I need to get this out of the way. I really do, okay? So we have Naomi Chance, who plays Avril, his intended. I fell in love with her voice. It was smoky, it was husky, it was alluring, and it was like, do you know what? Okay. I understand why he's doing what he's doing, because I would do it too.
I will see you tonight.
I've got issues with her voice, right? First off,
no, you don't.
First off,
no, you
first
do
off,
not.
it is the plummiest English
You listen
accent.
to Kev.
No, I don't want to listen
She's
to
got
Kev.
the plummiest English accent, right? And then you've got her brother, who's Irish.
He was Irish.
Very Irish.
Yeah, it sounds like he's been in Ballymorey or something like that. It just, my word.
That's Scotland, Kev.
He's been in the commitments, Kev. There's a
I
difference.
don't do geography.
Doesn't do reading, doesn't do geography. No. I mean, all right. It sounds like that we're all coming at it from the same angle in that this film is a gigantic mess.
Yeah, there's an awful lot going on. I mean, just when you think you've got a handle on the plot, there's another element of the plot
That goes
And,
nowhere.
Oh, God.
that I'm not interested in. This is a character piece where none of the characters are fleshed out. They keep introducing character after character. I mean, there are 3 villains, and one of them gets no airtime at all. Probably 4. I mean, I'm discounting the 4th, but certainly the tertiary villain gets no airtime.
No.
The secondary villain, who we see early on and think, oh, okay, he's got the look.
Yep.
Then you don't ever see him again.
Nope.
And then our main villain is so boring, it's just not even worth commenting on. It's just what would they do? Why do we need 4 villains, and why do they need 4 plots?
You said that. I'm so glad you said that, though. You said, the main villain is so boring, because when he turned up at the end, the sort of, ha-ha, Mr. Bond in his eye. And I was like,
Who are you?
Really?
Who are you?
You look like you actually just bake cakes.
Yeah. It was Mr. Kipling was stood there threatening me with a gun, and I was just like, do you know what? You have a gun, but I'm not scared of you.
But the thing is, the first villain that we see, Snell, I thought he was brilliant. I really enjoyed his character, and then he just fell apart and became the most easily intimidated man ever by somebody just standing over him in a chair. And he was just like, okay, I'll say everything.
Did you get, as you mentioned there, Snell, wasn't it?
Snell,
echoes of the villain from our previous episode.
Yeah.
Yes,
last page.
absolutely.
There was that cool, smarmy villain vibe going on. And if they kept that going, great. And they didn't.
But
No.
for the 40 seconds he was in the film.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. So we need to give a bit of plot here, don't we?
Right.
A little bit.
Well,
So-
the film did.
Well, this is true. But you've got to... So we have a pilot, he disappears. We then find out that he was kind of caught up in some kind of smuggling deal. But then it involves forged money, gold masquerading as tools.
Yeah.
Yeah, gold tools.
And gold tools. And then there's people on one side wanting it and people on the other side wanting it. And I'm sorry, this film makes no sense whatsoever.
There's too many plot lines.
Yeah. Don't forget, we've got Blackmail in there. Yay!
Blackmail.
Another Blackmail.
Oh, Blackmail as well. Yeah, sorry, Kev.
I mean, it's daft enough that we've got the Blackmail plot thrown in anyway, because this Blackmail is nothing.
We didn't mean anything.
It goes nowhere
It's already
as well.
confusing
It goes
enough.
nowhere.
No, and then I'd forgotten all about the fact that there's a code book subplot later on. It's like, what is going on?
Yeah.
No. Bonkers.
We have not watched a Hammer film that has been this all over the place so far. I mean,
It's
in
convoluted.
terms,
Convoluted is the
thank
word.
you. That's
Yeah.
a perfect word. Yeah. I mean, we have not seen one this bad yet. And I don't mean the film's terrible, because I didn't find it terrible.
No, it's well produced.
Yeah.
I give it that credit.
It's well produced. It's well acted. There are some scenes that actually that did intrigue me. But you can't just have certain set pieces that work and stitch them all together and expect it to be a coherent piece. Because that's not how a film works, darling. That's not how a film works.
No, it skips all over the place, not only plot-wise, but geographically, because you're never quite sure what side of the channel you're supposed to be on. No. Because Talbot hooks up with this French girl, and we're not sure whether he's in France or whether he's brought her back over to Britain. But then you've got this motorbike chase, and Talbot's involved in that, and you think, well, that's from the airport in Southampton, and then at one point you've got, oh God, what's his name? The protagonist, anyway. You've got, the forgettable.
Richard,
yeah, you've got Richard, the forgettable protagonist at the other side, just going, if you stand on a chair, you can actually see Southampton from here. And I'm thinking, what, where are you now? Because then his, Avril.
Yes, now you're talking.
She drives a car up to meet him, and I'm thinking, so he's in France and she's just driven across the channel in a car. This is getting me confused.
Kev, even more confusingly, having watched this film sadly several times, it's actually neither of those. It's all set on a Channel Islands in between the two. So
they do mention that, don't they?
It begins in Southampton, but the majority of the action that we see is on Guernsey. Yeah, and I've been to Guernsey, and it's tiny. So it's they may have made it look bigger. That's the magic of cinema. So they're on the Channel Islands. Hence the reason the whole they found some Nazi plates so they can forge money. I don't think any of that happened in Guernsey at all.
Oh, it was the dollar bills, wasn't
nonsense.
it?
Yeah, which they did perfect by the end of the war. But none of it happened in Guernsey. It all happened in concentration camps. So yeah, that's. But yeah, it's. Why they've set it there as well, I've absolutely no idea.
Sorry, I just love the pause and then why?
Well, it's emotion. I'm asking a question and getting no answers from this film.
But we did get some lovely photos of the Bahamas.
Yes, which we never went to. I should wrestle this back to, as I'm meant to be leading this discussion, to some semblance of a second question. So one of the sort of subplots that they throw in is the fact that our hero, in inverted commas, Van, or Richard, whichever way the wind is blowing, he has these blackouts, and that's the reason that he can't commit to Avril, is because he doesn't want her to be distraught if he ends up as a splattered mess in an aeroplane. And it's our third medical thing in a row, and by this point, it's getting a touch tired, or am I being a little bit harsh?
You're right. I hadn't thought of it that way. But yeah.
I just don't see what it brings to the film. I don't know what you thought, Kev.
No, well, the fact that he actually says that he only flies planes over the channel wherever on his own, and he only flies freight because of he's petrified of his blackouts. And he says, it's all right if I go down, there's only me. And I'm thinking, you're flying over houses, you weirdo.
Yeah. Populated areas, remember those?
Yeah. But no.
In a plane full of someone else's stuff. But no, whatever.
But also is the fact that they mention that at the start, don't they? they sort of say, you can't fly because you have these blackouts. I haven't told anyone, blah, blah, blah. And apart from his bird knows, so she knows as well. But then it also comes to the fact that during the entire runtime of the film, granted it's not very long, but he has one proper blackout. You know, surely it's a thing that happens quite often, so that he actually is a danger to himself and other people. That's why he's been grounded. But it's not. It's just something that happens once. And what happens? Apparently, he ends up in a car crash that the car is completely totaled, and he wakes up with a plaster on his forehead.
Well, he had his seatbelt on.
In France.
Yeah, not in the 50s he didn't, mate.
Clunk click, they didn't even have a seatbelt.
Yeah, they weren't a thing in the 50s. But, but it's just sort of like, oh, come on. I mean, this is just lazy, isn't it?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And, the other thing as well is, this film cheats the viewer. And again, I'm just going to pose the question, and I'm going to throw it over to Kev initially. The big sort of twist of the film is that Nick dies, and this is not a spoiler because it doesn't basically foreshadow the end of the film. Nick dies.
I don't think we can spoil this film any more than the film spoils itself. You know what I mean?
He dies very early in the film, and then lo and behold, about 2/3 of the way through the film, he re-emerges. And they really cheat the viewer because Van talks about Nick's body to the point where, he's broken his neck, he's definitely dead. And they don't sort of say, this is what Van thinks. They make it sound as if he's seen the body.
Yeah.
And so when he re-emerges later, it's not like a kind of, that was really good writing. That was like, but you told us something else had happened. I don't know if that's what you felt, Kev.
Well, ironically, a few episodes ago, I did a thing on faking your own death, and I said, well, don't start faking your own death because that's tempting fate. You know, it's only going to end in tears. But
That's fair,
yeah. So obviously Nick's going to have a rough ride all the way back now.
And deservedly so.
Yeah, deservedly. But he's a bit of an arse. But then you think,
He really
hang
is.
on, Van Ness is no better. He's a bit of an arse because he's so wrapped up in himself having these crazy blackouts that he has less than I do in every Saturday. But the fact that
his don't involve street vodka, though. Yeah.
or being on a Zoom call while it's happening.
gutter gin.
Gutter gin.
But the fact that he's so tied up in this that he decides that he's going to cut himself off from his girlfriend, and that doesn't work. There's no chemistry before he starts cutting himself off, so you don't feel any loss. It's just a completely... Everybody's like a tree in this. Everybody stands around like a tree. Nobody's really...
Like a dead tree.
Yeah, just there's no body language. There's no communication between people. It's just people stood opposite each other talking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Kev, I'm so pleased you said that because one of my major criticism about this film, and I have several minor criticisms, but my major one is there is absolutely no chemistry, particularly between the two male leads. I think there's a touch between Zachary Scott and Avril's character.
Oh, yeah.
But between... it's meant to be effectively a very early buddy, so not comedy, but buddy action film. And they seem like they hate each other. And that's all I get. I don't know. Smokey, what did you think?
I completely agree with that. I was going to say something very similar. I mean, I don't know. We don't know the backstory, but it didn't seem like they got on in the slightest because it seemed like they wanted to get through their lines and they wanted to get to lunch before and they could forget each other for an hour and then come back on screen again, do a bit more, and then go for dinner. You know what I mean? It was, oh, dear God.
Yeah.
Also, the actor playing Nick, Robert Beatty.
Yeah, the crap Irish man.
I don't know. Again, miscasting. I don't. He was supposed right at the very beginning. We meet him right at the very beginning. He's supposed to be cocky. He's supposed to be. He's maverick. He's supposed to be smooth, suave.
He's a sex machine.
Exactly. He's supposed to be tossing cocktails around with Brian Brown. Oh no, that was a different movie. But he's supposed to be that, and he comes across as an absolute bellend, and I didn't care. And they're saying, "Oh, he's gone down in his plane." I was like, "Oh, good," because then his mates.
Yeah, exactly. That was my thought as well, though. And that's exactly what I was saying at the beginning: is that you're meant to feel sorry for him and feel good for the other guy, and it's the other way around. You think, "I don't care about this dweeb, and I'm glad he's dead."
Exactly, but then juxtapose that with the fact that his sister is the sweetest creature. You know, she's attentive and she's nice and let's not put too fine a point on it. She can act. And so it was.
She can. You can out-act them all.
She was. She was the best thing in this. She was absolutely. In fact, I'm going to give her credit once again. Naomi Chance. She was absolutely wonderful, and I think she's the best thing in this film. But also, just going back to something you both mentioned just there, right? So you are led to believe that Van has seen Nick's charred and broken body, right? He even convinces Nick's dad that he's dead. Where the dad has been just sort of like, do you know what? I'll only believe it. It's the Game of Thrones theorem. I'll only believe they're dead when I see them dead, okay? And he's been that through the entire film until Van just corners him and she sort of says, "No, your boy's dead, right? I've seen it." And no, he hasn't.
No, he's seen nothing.
Yeah, I feel sorry for his dad anyway, because his dad gets collared in this hotel lobby. And
the best scene of the film.
Yeah, he gets collared in this hotel lobby where he's told that his son's died, and then he gets collared by one of the other people from the hotel or wherever it is that he owns, and she's going, "Oh, sorry to hear his son's dead, but my sister's knackered. Can you get that fixed, please?"
I loved it. She says, "I feel so bad that your son has perished in a fiery wreck. Oh, by the way, my bog's knackered." Yeah. It's so good.
Well, hello, you two. Have you had a nice evening?
Very. I suppose now is as good a time as any, sir, to tell you how sorry I am.
Thank you, Ben.
Oh, Mr. Talbot, I've been looking for you all day. You'll excuse me, won't you? Your poor son. I was so desperately sorry to hear the news. Such a fine, upstanding young man. centre of attraction whenever he entered the room. Magnificent, quite magnificent. It's a little difficult to know what to say in the circumstances, but you do know what I feel, don't you? And there was something else now. What was it? Oh, yes, my cistern. It's making those dreadful gurgling noises again. I wonder if you could possibly...
I'll see that it's fixed, Mrs. Clarence.
Oh, would you? Thank you so much.
Excuse me.
Chin up, Talbot. Chin up.
Good night.
Good night.
You say that, but if you've got a log stuck, you've got to mention it.
Oh, it was. I loved that scene. Every time I've watched this film this week, I've seen that scene like head in hands and just gone, "Oh, this is fantastic."
Yeah, no idea why that's there at all, but it's great.
No, but it actually does bizarrely bring up a good point, right? How many times in the past, in all the Hammer films we've watched so far, have we said X, Y, and Z was based on a stage play and they've brought it to the screen, right? This wasn't, okay? This was a screenplay brought to the screen,
book.
okay?
It was a book.
The aeroplanes would have been difficult.
Converted into a screenplay. And so it's just sort of like, you can tell the difference straight away.
Yeah.
And especially after the last page as well. Because obviously that worked. This did not. I mean, this has got to be a warning shot across the bow for Hammer of going, okay, we've tried it the play way of adaptation. Now we've done the screenplay way. One works and one doesn't. Okay. And this really doesn't work.
I think it's sort of in not in summary, because we're going to move on to that in a moment, but you look at the film poster for this, the main poster, and Zachary Scott is on it 3 times doing 3 different things. And that's, for me, it's almost a kind of a metaphor for the film. It's that they didn't know what on earth to do with this. So it was like ram, as we've already said, ram as many subplots in as possible. The counterfeiting, the murder, the blackmail, the espionage, the fake death, and we'll see what comes out the other end. And it just doesn't work because there's too much going on. And we're still only talking about 70 minutes. And you just think, the most frustrating point about this film is there is a film in there. They're really, you can see it. It's well produced, and Zachary Scott, he's on the back foot from the opening 10 minutes. But if you knock that out and you stop making him do 17 ludicrous things and just have him do 2, it's like you think, oh no, I can see him as a bit of a a minor hero.
Agreed.
Yeah, I just anyway. We'll start to sum up. So, do you want to give us one random thought about the film, Kev, and then your rating? Just anything that we haven't mentioned so far that you want to talk about?
There are some good lines in it.
Okay, good. I like this. Yeah, keep it positive if we can.
Yeah. Why don't you get back to being dead and stop bothering me?
That's good. Yeah. That is a good line. That is good. Yeah, I'll give that
again
thumbs up.
Between you two leads as well that obviously hate each other as characters as well as leads. And then, of course, the other one is,
it's your own fault. You shouldn't go around murdering people.
That's a great line.
That is a great line.
Yep.
I like it.
But as a rating, I'd only go for 3.5, maybe 4 if I was feeling a bit generous. Possibly because of the Frankenstein's windmill at the end. It gets an extra sort of nudge for that. So, that's as far as I'm going.
Smokes?
I wish I'd written it down now, but I don't. There was a line when Van is talking to the police who are kind of been following him through. Well, have they been following him throughout the
another rubbish policeman?
Yeah. The police. Yeah.
Awful policeman. Yeah.
But it's sort of like they're doing this witty banter back and forth, and he just suddenly goes, "Well, how about we do the washing up and go to bed?" And it was like, "What?" It was I don't think I got that completely right, but I'm paraphrasing. But it was something along those lines. I was like, I don't understand what either of you are talking about right now. No, we're back on familiar ground here. This is a missed opportunity. Remake this easy. Remake it as an 1.5-hour long film with a decent lead. Knock off, as you said, Ben, knock off that first 10 minutes, but establish your leading man as the leading man, not as the secondary man who then morphs into the leading man. This isn't Ash in The Evil Dead, right? It isn't someone who comes from behind and then takes over. This is someone who starts in 4th and finishes in 6th. It's just, oh God. Positives. as I said, the sister, Avril, she's wonderful. I was kind of in love because I could just listen to that voice. And if, as I'm editing this episode, if I don't just drop lots of clips of her voice in this, I'll be very surprised. Yeah, she was great. But it's just a mess. There's a story in there waiting to be told.
There really is.
And they didn't tell a story. They told us about 20 stories that had nothing to do with each other.
I've just thought about something.
Uh-oh.
Elmore Leonard, he said about a screenplay being a completely different animal to a novel, because in a novel you've got endless pages where you can have tons of description and characters and subplots and stuff, but you have to manage your expectations because there's going to be so much of that discarded to make a film that makes sense. And
Sure.
I feel like John Gillen has just completely forgotten about this with this particular screenplay, because it's almost like he's trying to cram in a 500-page book with all its different characters, with all its different subplots, all into 70 minutes. And it's just never going to work. He's just been too faithful to the source material, if you ask me. It's like they're trying to cram in a 4-hour movie into this 70 minutes.
They really have, yeah. And it's just left it incoherent to the fact that I really didn't care. When one of the major characters, no spoilers, as if I care, but no spoilers. But when one of the major characters dies, it was just sort of like, I don't mind. You know, it was just all right.
It almost improved the film, to be honest.
It did actually, yeah,
because it gave it a bit of poetic justice.
Yeah, it did a little bit.
In terms of your rating, Smokey, what would you give it?
I feel really harsh because there are some decent bits in it, but I think a 4. I think it's below average. This isn't what we've come to appreciate with Hammer recently, and especially after the last page and Cloudburst so recent. Okay, we've had a couple of missteps, Death of an Angel and Black Widow and whatnot, but this could have been really good, and sadly it wasn't. So yeah, it's a 4 from me, I'm afraid.
I think for me, just to sort of underscore what I've said and to build on a little bit on what you said, Smokey, I think this is like, imagine watching Ghostbusters and then all of a sudden Lewis Tully became the hero halfway through, and you think, yeah, well, I was on board, but now I'm not.
He does in Ghostbusters
I'd
too.
watch it. Wouldn't like it. Yeah, and I didn't like that either. But I think, I'd completely agree. I think I'd give it a 4 as well. So I think we're absolutely all in the same ballpark. There's too much going on here, and I think what we should say as well is, we love what the journey we've been on so far. We love Hammer. We'll get to the latter films in 100 years' time. But we do judge these films as film critics. That's what we're here to do. So we're not going to pull punches when they need to be thrown. And this isn't a good film.
No.
And despite the fact it's frustrating that we can see that it could be better, I can't give this more than a 4, and I won't. And I won't go back to this one. I didn't hate it as much as a couple of the others that I did. Now I will be more sympathetic to it.
Which did you like more, this or Whispering Smith?
Dear me. I think the Whispering Smith, what I give it, a 3.
I can't remember actually.
They were pretty much on a par though. I think I enjoyed this. It's probably slightly more than Whispering Smith, but there's like a cigarette patter between them. Hey, look, it's just one of those things, isn't it? We've always said subjectivity and all that.
But yeah, true. So well, look at all the online reviews we read of the Rossiter case before we all praised it so highly.
Yeah,
and they were all slagging it off, and it was just all like, you know what? Nah, you're wrong.
It's like we always say, everyone's wrong but us.
So there we go. A pretty solid consensus from the three of us there. One more for the Hammer completists, I fear. Or we could be totally wrong. It is only our opinion, after all. Give the film a watch and let us know what you think. Well, now that we've got the film out of the way, we can get to the important bits. That would be us, by the way. Hammer, being the British stalwart that it was always going to be involved when it came to raising money for good old Blighty. But just how did the movie industry begin to do that? To tell us all about it is our wondrous marvel of a man, Mr. Kevmore.
As we rifle through the dusty bookshelves and boxes in the House of Hammer, we don't have to dig up some interesting tidbits. And here's another that starts with a man that occasionally looks like a crumpled brown bag and me talking tax and trying not to lose my mind in the process. The 50s were a time of change in the British film industry, and on the cusp of it all in 1949, the president of the Board of Trade and future Prime Minister Harold Wilson put forward the idea of a levy that would help and therefore encourage homegrown film productions. This was seen as a more reasonable plan after the disastrous introduction of a 75% duty on American films led to Hollywood boycotting the country for a year. At this point, I implore you, please don't play the drinking game where you take one every time I say British or Britain. It will cost you dearly. But it might be worth it. This levy, anyway, became known as the Eadie Levy after the Treasury official Sir Wilfrid Eadie launched the Eadie Plan in September 1950. In its most simplest terms, the idea was for Her Majesty's Customs and Excise to collect a percentage of the box office and hand it over to the British Film Fund Agency. The smart part about doing it this way was it wouldn't be seen as a tax on the general public, which at the time was still living with rationing and very austere conditions. But then here comes the kicker. To qualify for this eye-wateringly sizable pile of cash, £3 million in its first year, a film had to be seen to be at least 85% British made. It had to be shot in the UK or the Commonwealth, and with only 3 non-British individual salaries excluded from the costs of the film. This protected the employment of the British actors, technicians, film crew and studios. The effects of this levy didn't take long to become evident. As we've already seen, more recognisable names from the golden age of Hollywood suddenly, and very awkwardly, appear in a Hammer film. This would become something of a theme throughout the 50s as the studio continued its work with Lippert Films. They weren't the only ones though. This was seen as an opportunity by the major US studios to co-produce films in Britain that were suddenly far cheaper and still looked as good, if not better, than their American counterparts. And all thanks to this wonderful ticket tax. It didn't take long for Hollywood to start moving money over and buying shares in cinema chains and studios alike, because Britain, after all, was the highest grossing outside of their own domestic market. As well as the high-profile on-screen talents moving to the British Isles on a semi- or permanent basis, there was also an influx of behind-the-scenes talents too, of course. Most notably among these have to be Sidney Lumet and Stanley Kubrick, who didn't even want to leave his own house. The UK film industry would become awash with these Anglo-American deals as Hollywood secured their place in the purse and the picture houses of Britain. And although the Eadie levy came to an end in 1985 because of the advent of home video and its damage to the box office, the effects can still be seen today. It's become hard to distinguish what makes a film British or American now, with titles such as Star Wars, Saving Private Ryan, and even that most American of heroes played by a Welshman, the Dark Knight trilogy, all predominantly British films. Who knows? One day I might tell you about the Dalton Duty or the establishing of the National Film Finance Committee, that are both major factors in the story of the Eadie levy, but for now I'm going to leave it because my brain might never want to work again.
Thank you, Kevy. He's cute, isn't he? Thinking that it actually worked to begin with. Although I think he was right. I shouldn't have played that drinking game. As mentioned earlier, the film revolves around something of a smuggling ring, whether it be gold, money, cigarettes, booze, or, incredibly sadly, humans. Smuggling really is something the modern world continues to deal with. Oh, damn, I can't fight it anymore. Let's have another round of Smokey's Where the Hell Did That Word Come From? The verb smuggle comes either from the Low German smuggling or the Dutch smuggling. Forgive my accent. Apparently, a frequentative formation of a word meaning to sneak, most likely entered the English language during the 16 and 1700s. You see, you come here every fortnight, and you learn things you never thought you would. Hand cranks, you betcha. The rules of 37 different darts games. Watch us and weep. Want to know why a word means what it does? Okie dokie. Whilst doing a bit of research into smuggling, my eye, quite naturally considering what I do in my spare time, was drawn to various lists of films that contain this particular illegal activity. But something struck me while I was perusing said lists. Smuggling movies have some of the most ridiculous titles ever. Who'd have thunk it? Some of these you'll know, and some of them you won't, but let's just see if you agree with me. Number 1. The Red Sea Diving Resort. That does not entice me to go there in the slightest. Number 2. Pushpa, The Rise. Sounds like a bit like a cousin to Peppa Pig. Number 3. Running with the Devil. Isn't that a Van Halen song? Number 4. Broke Down Palace. They're really not even trying with that one, are they? Number 5. The Cassandra Crossing. And that just sounds like an early forerunner to our modern day Karens. Oh, and let's not even get started on snakes on a plane. I know it does what it says on the tin, but we can all agree that's just the height of laziness. Anyway, that's enough of that. Back to us. Also mentioned earlier was the nefarious scheme of money laundering. But what actually is the history of the old funny money? Well, to tell us more than we could ever wish to know on the subject, is our very own muddy funster himself, Ben Taylorson.
Counterfeiting, the production of currency without the legal sanction of state or government, is almost as old as money itself. So much so, in fact, that it's often referred to as the world's second oldest profession. If you don't know what the world's oldest profession is, I suggest you ask your mum or dad. Or Kev. He was likely there at its inception. Well, sorry, I don't mean there as in, paying for... I just meant he's ancient. Anyway, the first coins were produced in 600 BC, and the earliest form of counterfeiting involved shaving the edges of the coins, known as clipping. Not only did this devalue the coin, as it made it smaller, but the precious metals in the shavings could be used to plate a base metal coin and make it appear as if it was formed of solid precious metal. So if you shaved, say, 5 coins, you could use the metal to plate a worthless base metal and turn 5 into 6. The practice continued for centuries, but could prove to be a risky venture. Given that state sanction is required to produce currency, the act of counterfeiting could be viewed as a crime against the state, and indeed, the head of state. In other words, treason. Hence the reason that in 1690, when English couple Thomas and Anne Rogers were convicted of clipping 40 pieces of silver, they were sentenced to death. Mr. Rogers was hanged, drawn and quartered, which seems a touch over the top, whilst Mrs. Rogers was merely burnt alive. Ouch. In 17th and 18th century colonial America, paper currency printed by Benjamin Franklin and others often bore the phrase, "to counterfeit is death." The theory behind such a threat and resultant punishments was that anyone who had the skills to counterfeit currency was considered a threat to the safety of the state, and therefore had to be eliminated. During the American Revolutionary War, Great Britain sought to reduce the value of the continental dollar, and to do that they used fake money. The use of counterfeit currency has been a strategy in warfare for centuries. The idea is to flood the enemy's economy with fake money, thus devaluing the real money and causing an economic collapse, rendering the enemy unable to fund their side of the war. In this conflict, the British counterfeiters were known as shovers, their job being to shove fake currency into circulation. Two of the most well-known shovers for the British during the Revolutionary War were David Farnsworth and John Blair. They were caught with $10,000 in counterfeits when they were arrested, the equivalent of about $340,000 today. They were both sentenced to death by hanging, executed for their crimes. In Wings of Danger, reference is made to the fake dollars at the centre of the plot having been made from plates left over from World War II.
What's he got on the causeway? Dollars. And millions of them. Spencer makes them. The airline delivers them.
He found a set of forging plates left behind by the Nazis. That started it. That's all I wanted to know.
This is likely a reference to Operation Bernhardt. The initial aim of the operation was similar to that previously described. Nazi Germany sought to forge British banknotes, then drop them over Britain to bring about a collapse of the British economy. But the aim was changed, and the focus became using the forged banknotes to finance German intelligence operations. Prisoners from Nazi concentration camps were selected and sent to work under SS Major Bernhard Kruger. The prisoners were chosen based on their profession. Those with skills in draftsmanship, engraving, printing and banking were deemed to have the necessary qualities to help produce the highest quality forgeries. The unit produced British notes until mid-1945, and it is estimated it produced fake money to the tune of up to £300 million. By the time the unit ceased production, they'd also perfected the artwork for US dollars, hence the plates found lying around in the Channel Islands in our movie, an area occupied by the Nazis in World War II. Given that counterfeiting has been with us for a long time, and indeed continues to this day, there's also a long history of anti-counterfeiting measures. To prevent clipping, our earliest form of forgery, milled or reeded edges marked with parallel grooves were used to show that none of the valuable metal had been scraped off. In early paper money in colonial North America, one way of deterring counterfeiters was to print the impression of a leaf on a bill. Since patterns found in a leaf were unique and complex, they were particularly difficult to reproduce. More modern anti-counterfeiting methods in printed currency include holograms, multicoloured or colour-shifting notes, embedded strips, raised printing, microprinting and watermarks. I'll end my section with a couple of fun forgery facts. The first is in relation to Francis Greenway, who was an English-born architect. He was transported to Australia in 1814 as a convict for the crime of forgery. He went on to become a prominent planner of public buildings and posthumously became probably the only ever forger to be depicted on a banknote, the Australian $10 note. And finally, I once got to witness the act of currency forgery up close. As a teenager, an acquaintance of mine thought it would be a tremendous idea to use a colour photocopier to reproduce a £10 note. The resulting forgery, printed on bog standard printing paper, was laughably unconvincing. You have to remember we're talking about photocopying technology from the previous millennium. Anyway, he scrunched it up so as to give it that well-worn banknote look and was convinced it would pass as real. And, unbelievably, he was right. He somehow managed to find the dimmest cashier of all time who accepted it in exchange for whatever goods or services he was purchasing. However, someone with a brain eventually noted that this photocopied monstrosity was not in fact genuine currency, and the police came a-knocking for my classmate, the not-so-master forger. If I recall correctly, he was not hung, drawn and quartered or burned alive, but his dad's computer was seized by the police and he got a formal caution. His forgery career over before it started.
And thank you, Ben. He seems to have made something of a career of being the good guy while surrounding himself with reprobates, hasn't he? I'm not sure I like where that's going. Well, my friends, we are almost at the end of this episode. But before we go, we did have some time to answer some of your lovely questions. So just a quick hop, skip and a jump back to the round table for one of the slightly more surreal conversations we've had. And that's saying something.
So we've had a couple of questions from the socials, and if you don't follow us on those, we do our main sort of chatting on Twitter. So if you're a Twitter user, then please do follow us and get involved in the conversation. So we've had a question from a tree who's asking, do you ever revisit movies and change the rating you gave them because you've seen a new movie that is much, much worse? So yeah, basically, I think what Tree's asking is, is it a sliding scale? If you've ever, I don't know, say, been asked to review a whole slew of movies and then not sort of knowing how to rate the first one in comparison to the other ones, or whatever it happens to be. Do you guys do that, Smokes?
I was thinking about this. I don't think I do. I may go back and tweak a rating here or there, but I'm quite a stubborn. So I do normally tend to stick to my ratings, as most of you listening will know. But no, I don't think I've ever been swayed by seeing something terrible and thinking, oh well, I watched a 2 out of 10 tonight, but last night's was a 3 out of 10, so I'll push it to a 4. That's not really how I work as a film reviewer, if I'm allowed to call myself that.
Of course you are.
But no, I don't think my brain will let me work that way. If I watch a film that's utterly dreadful, I mean, I've only rated a few films over my reviewing career as a 1 or a 2. There's not many. And they're ones that have either deeply offended me or have been, utter. So yeah, no, it's a good question, but no, I don't think I've ever had that myself personally. Kev, how about yourself?
I have changed my ratings, but it's usually because it's the luxury of a few years later. Because sometimes you'll watch a film and you're just not in the right headspace for it or something.
That's a different question.
You might think it's. Well, it really is revisiting, changing your rating that you gave them because you've seen a new movie. I wouldn't say I would say I will change it on the personal, on the movie on its own merits, because sometimes you do get into a film a bit more on a rewatch.
That's true.
But as far as in relation to any other films, no, there's nothing that's going to affect. I'm still going to rate River Patrol lowest, even though I've seen that Sporting Love. So,
no, look, I'm going to have to disagree with that. I preferred River Patrol over Sporting Love.
Allow me to interject before we
with the voice of reason.
Before we start fighting. No, I'm going to bring you 2 points together and agree with you both. Is that I have changed my review, but it was never on the basis of looking at a film in comparison to another film. Like Kev said,
no.
You look at the film like Smokey said. You don't compare one film to another and think, oh, I'm increasing my rating because this is an example of a robot comes back in time and kills people. Oh my God, this was far worse than the other one I saw. I don't do things like that. So no, I think it's only any sensible film critic or rounded film critic can criticize their own subjectivity and their own reviews. And I mean, we've done it on this show, talking in the round table. I've come in with a score and changed my mind based on what you've said.
Yep.
But I haven't come in and changed my mind based on the fact that I've seen another terrible Blackmail aeroplane film in the interim.
But then also, it brings us back to what we were talking about recently, is that we did the Hammer screening for Song of Freedom, and we all rated it higher.
We did.
Yeah.
Yeah. For those listeners who aren't patrons, if you want to come along to one of these screenings, because that was a real eye opener. We really enjoyed watching this film with our patron followers, and it changed our perception of the film a little bit.
Yeah.
Watching it again, listening to the sensible comments that were made in the chat, and talking about it together afterwards in the Zoom call. It was a real eye opener for me, and I've been watching. I'm 41 years old. I've been watching films all my life, and I always listen to people that I sort of appreciate their opinions of.
Yep.
And that was definitely one of the pivotal points of my film watching, sort of life, where I thought I'm surrounded by people who know what they're talking about. We've all watched this together. The group think has basically said this is how the film should be perceived, and we were, I really enjoyed that film. It was cracking, and I enjoyed it so much watching it with other people.
Yeah.
I can't disagree with that at all.
Next question, on a lighter note, Kevin. Adam is asking. This film features quite a prominent mustache. Let's not beat around the tash. Zachary Scott is sporting a reasonable one on a scale of 1 to 10 tashes. I'd give it probably a 6. And Adam is asking, there is a follow-up question for us non-mustachioed people, Smokes. What are your top mustache tips, Kev? Because you've got a cracker going on there.
You do.
Top mustache tips. I think I'd put a bit more work into it, because at the minute Zachary Scott is still looking like Richard Johnson. He's just doing a pretty straightforward tash. I think he needs to get a bit more flair in there. He wants to go.
He needs to up his tash.
He does want to up his tash game. It's a bit like everything else. His character's pretty vanilla. So's his tash. It's kind of basic, but yeah, it's like tash by Lego.
Nice. But what are your tips for those out there that want one as luscious as yours?
Yeah, I mean, as outstanding as the kind of head turning tash you've got. That's what men aspire to. What would you say?
Spend a lot of time indoors. Don't go out. Just ignore everybody and grow your hair as long as your fingernails, and then trim it back and see what you've got afterwards.
Do you wax it, Kev?
I do. Yes.
What about your moustache?
No, don't bother that.
On that note, this is I love this question as well. It's also from Adam because I'm going to go in. I'm not throwing this out to you. I'm answering this question.
Okay.
What is your top screen mustache? There is only one answer, and so you can say what you want after this. But you're all wrong.
Can I guess what you're going to say?
Don't steal my thunder, because yes, you can. That's the problem. Is that Aaron Eckhart's mustache in Sully is the only screen mustache of note. It's like the god of mustaches. It's like all mustaches.
It is wonderful.
It's like a broom. It's like the Ned Flanders of mustaches. It's like you think, no one can do a mustache like that because that's animated. Oh my good god! Yeah. Aaron Eckhart has produced it, and you could sweep a floor with it.
It's beautiful. But there are a couple more, Oof. And I think Kev might have one on my list as well. By the looks of him.
Should we go to Kev first?
Yeah, go on, Kev.
Right, all I've got to say is Tombstone has the trifecta of Tash. You have Kurt Russell,
that's fair.
Kurt Russell's Tash,
Michael Biehn,
Val Kilmer, and Sam Elliott.
Oh no, Michael Biehn.
And Michael Biehn has a Tash as well.
Yeah, but I'm sorry, but Sam Elliott.
And Powers Booth has a Tash.
Honestly,
Tash is everywhere. You can't move
Tombstone, it's just full of Tash action, and that's how
it should have been called Tashstone, shouldn't it? Tombstash.
Go back to your first one.
Yeah.
Tashstone was better.
Okay. It's a harsh crowd. Smokey?
Well, I'm going to go first off a little. I was going to say Michael Biehn in Tombstone because it's just beautiful. It's luscious. But what's that line from Dodgeball? It's got to be the hair. It's luscious. It's feathery. It's just it's that. Quite a conservative one, but just the way he wears it is beautiful. Is Robert Goulet in Naked Gun 2.5.
Oh, yes.
It's just, he rocks it so well. But then the other one, Ben, I can't believe you haven't mentioned this, is Stacy Keach in Body Bags when he has the hair implantation growing out of his face. It looks like a bit like Michael J. Fox in Teen Wolf. It's that flowing thing coming out the top of his lip is just, it's beautiful. But, there's something about Robert Goulet in Naked Gun 2.5 that I just find very alluring. I think, there's
I enjoy the confidence that a modern man such as Kev has to have in producing a moustache.
Oh, I couldn't do it.
You're either in or you're out. And frankly, I'm out.
So, there you have it. Do you have a favourite movie moustache? Get in touch and let us know. And if you really want to, because hell, why wouldn't you? You can find us on Instagram and Twitter at HouseHammerPod, or fling us a good old email at scream@houseofhammerpodcast.com. Also, never forget that you can now have us pressed against your wobbly bits and your dangly doodahs by visiting our lovely merch store. The link is in the show notes. And many thanks for all the wonderful pictures we have received of you drinking us and wearing us. You're all much better looking than we are, and we all hate you for it. Next time, we bring you a tale of being kicked out of your house, some juicy murder shenanigans, and lying to a jury. And who knows, we may even get round to talking about a film, too. So until then, from me, Smokey.
From me, Ben Tillison.
And from me, Kev Moore.
We hope for nothing but happiness for you all. And we cannot wait to see you next time, here at the House of Hammer.